Hello and welcome to the Life by Design podcast, brought to you by Strategic. This podcast is all about helping you live your great life. Hello, welcome to the Life by Design podcast. Joining me once again is Greg Mattacola, one of our senior advisors here at Strategic. Hello, Greg.
Hello, Jay. So happy to be back.
Good. Yeah, I'm glad to have you back. And the last time we talked about behavioral awareness when dealing with finances. And so I think it's kind of striking that I'm having you back because May is Mental Health Awareness Month. And I know this is a topic that's close to your heart and something you like to speak with folks about. And so I thought it would be a good idea to have you in, and you wanted to come in and talk about it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's great to be here. Yeah, it is important to me. And I think it's important to everyone, but yet we often don't talk about it as much as we should. And we don't have it kind of in the conversation as much as we should. And I think it's an important month to bring it to the forefront. And that's what I hope to do today.
Yeah, and I think, for those of you at home, just to be prepared, this may have some topics in here that may hit close to home. And so, if it's not something you're ready for right now, please, you don't have to listen. But, if you really want to talk about this and hear our side of the conversation, please stay with us. But just some information here. Mental Health Awareness Month, the month of May, has been instituted in the U.S. since 1949. And it's something that across the spectrum of mental illness and mental health, it's been instituted to be, to be around so that we talk about it. And that, like Greg said, something that needs to be talked about, something that I think, might rear its head specifically when in regards to our business, when we have up and down months or several months like we have recently. This is something that may come to mind and something that you need to be aware of that could perhaps trigger some of our folks at home.
Absolutely. Sure. Because certainly the last several months in the market and the world and geopolitics and domestic have been anxiety inducing. We've had lots of folks that have, gone through a range of feelings about everything that's been going on. And a lot of it, kind of instigates anxiety.
Yeah.
And, that is something that can't be ignored. And we talk, to me, why this is important is so many fronts and so many reasons. At Strategic, we talk about helping our clients live and lead their very best lives. And sure, at the root of what we do here, we are managing people's finances. And a big part of leading their best lives and living their best lives is being in sound and good financial position. And we are amazing at that. But we don't just stop there. We genuinely want our clients to be living organically, holistically, their best lives. And that includes health. That includes, life satisfaction. And health, to me, obviously physical is a big part of it, but it's also mental. And where are your emotions? How are you feeling about things? And I think this is a topic, throughout the years that finally, I think, has shed a lot of its stigma in terms of dealing with anxiety or depression or a range of mental issues and battles that folks go through on a regular basis. But it has not always been that way, right? If you think back to, how we were raised and growing up, this wasn't necessarily talked about a lot, and specifically with men. It was not something that men admitted to, they were supposed to be the providers and strong, and they didn't succumb to these types of things. That was how, I was raised, and I saw firsthand the detriment of not dealing with things. My dad suffered from mental illness. I witnessed it my whole childhood. He ultimately succumbed to his mental illness and took his own life. And I don't bring that up to start off with this tragic, down note. I bring it up because that is the absolute extreme point of what can happen when you don't talk about things and when you don't seek help. And back then, in the 70s and 80s, that was not something that I think most men thought that they had at their disposal. I don't think that they had felt that they had those options. And today, in 2025, I think we are in a vastly different world. However, I think we still need to kind of keep the pedal to the floor in terms of letting folks know that this is something that people should address head on if they feel that they are encountering some battles.
Yeah, I think I've definitely seen that, and some of my upbringing showed that, we had the folks that went through World War II, the golden generation, into the baby boomers, and even into Gen X millennials, right, where I kind of straddled those two areas, is a lot of that old conversation, if you ever remember, depending on your age, yourself or your grandfather or your father say, just like suck it up, go, you got to work, you got to take care of the family, you got to suck it up and just like be this kind of pillar of strength to support your family or to whatever that may look like. And I think as, I look at my generation and how we are bringing up our kids, the conversation's much different, right? And so, besides being anecdotal, we kind of looked into some of the numbers here, and the National Institute of Mental Health had a report in the 22-23 year that said basically 59.3 adults 18 and plus in the United States have any sort of mental illness. They call it AMI. And that is roughly 23% of U.S. adults. And, I was kind of discussing these numbers with you before we started, and you're like, yeah, reported.
Right. Right. So, when you look at the numbers, there are higher percentages for younger people, and the older the range goes, the lower percentage it is of those that are suffering. And to me, that's an indication of how we were raised generationally and who has actually, sought out help so that they become one of these counted people. And I think we still have work to do in that regard, because this is something that, to me, the most important takeaway from today, and we'll have lots of tips and hints and helpful things, I hope. But to me, the most important takeaway is this is not a journey you need to walk alone. We have all been in what I call, the hole at some point in our lives. I have suffered from anxiety and depression at various points of my life. I think most folks have. If people were speaking honestly and forthright, I think most folks have been through something in their life, some type of trauma, loss, you name it, that have induced periods of mental struggle. It is very natural, very normal. There is no stigma. There is no shame in that. And it is not a journey that you have to walk alone. My favorite parable that I think sums up this topic is a man found himself down a deep, dark hole, and he couldn't get out. And above, at street level, he sees the town priest walking by, and he calls out, "Father, Father, I'm down in this hole. I can't get out. I don't know how to get out." And the priest writes a little prayer on a piece of paper and tosses the prayer down in the hole and keeps on his way. And obviously the man still can't get out. And then the town physician walks by and he says, "Doctor, I'm down in this hole. I can't get out. I don't know how to get out." The doctor writes a prescription, tosses it in the hole, and keeps on. And obviously the man is still in the hole. And a neighbor walks by and he recognizes him. He says, "Joe, it's me. I'm in this hole. I can't get out. I can't find my way out." Joe jumps down in the hole with him. He says, "What did you do that for? Now we're both down here." Joe says, "Yes, but I've been here before and I know the way out." To me, that symbolizes and encapsulates everything about this topic, because you need help.
Mm-hmm.
We all need help at various times. And to get that help, and it could be a little bit of help, you just need someone to talk to, work your way through it. It could be a lot of help. You need a physician. You need counseling, maybe medication, whatever the case may be, and there is a big range.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to walk this journey alone. There are so many avenues out there today to help folks and to make sure that when you are fighting these demons and going through these periods and you're in the hole, that there's people and resources to help you.
Yeah, and I think, as you were kind of saying that in the nature of the work we do, right? I think that crosses, though we're specifically talking about mental health, it crosses all kinds of financial health, like anything that you can put health next to it, right?
Exactly.
I think it's always hard to reach out and ask for help, no matter what the problem is that you're having. Even as simple as like trying to fix your lawnmower, right? Like that's, you're like, "No, I got this. Like, I'm going to figure this out." Right. And I think the first step is recognizing the scope of the problem that you're dealing with and whether or not you're equipped to deal with it, no matter what the level of the problem
exactly
is. Right. And I think sometimes too, and we're going to touch on this a little bit, is maybe even recognizing that there is a problem. Right. And I think in my example with the lawnmower, that's an easy thing to recognize. And I think anything like tactile like that or physical, sometimes it's easy to recognize those limits. And you're going, "Oh, yeah, I actually don't know anything about small engine repair. So I need to go to somebody to fix this." And that's an easier recognition, where when it comes to finances, mental health, I think the pieces that or the kind of like journey is a little bit different and a little bit harder to recognize.
Agree. It sometimes it sneaks up on folks, right? Like it might start, small, so to speak, and kind of the symptoms or the indicators kind of, aggregate over time. And, you're not sleeping, or you're sleeping too much. You're not eating, or you're binge eating. You're binge drinking, or turning to other substances. There's all of these different kind of indicators that you might notice, and maybe one or two in and of themselves might not raise any red flags, but then they start to compound. And that's really that emotional awareness, right? We've talked about this before. We talked about it in behavioral finance. Well, it again pops up here. It is that doing kind of your, that systems check, and that self-evaluation and that self-introspection, right? But, above the temple of Apollo in ancient Greece, it said, "Know thyself."
Yeah.
Right. So we all know ourselves, I think, and we know when something's off. And we know when we're not feeling right. And one of the things that has been helpful for me, that I've learned throughout the years as a technique, is to name it. The unknown is scary, right? But when we name something, when we recognize, identify, and name something, it becomes less scary. And now it's moved towards something that we can find a solution for. So if this is a perfect week, right? We're coming off of a miserably gray, rainy weekend. It has been a long, hard winter. It has been a wet, long spring, cold. This week, the weather has been dreadful. Multiple people that I've come in contact with have expressed how their mood is lower and they're less optimistic and less happy, and a direct result of the weather.
For those of you in New York.
That's exactly right.
Some of you listening may be in
for our
Florida,
California
clients,
they're not probably experiencing the same thing.
Looking out their window, going, "What is he talking about?"
It's beautiful here.
I've never seen such a week.
So, if that's that self-evaluation, that's that awareness, right? Like if you wake up and you feel down and you feel like the weight of the world is on your shoulders and you're just miserable and you don't immediately know what's causing it. Well, that's where that introspection comes into play. And that is, okay, what's going on in my life right now that could be causing this? Oh, well, we're on our 12th day without seeing the sun. I've got this major project looming that's causing me anxiety. I've got this anniversary of a loved one's death. Whatever it might be, those are the things to be aware of, right? Because once you're aware of them and you name them, then you can deal with them, right? And that's a big thing, is that introspection, that emotional awareness. And that will allow you to recognize the times when it's not just enough to name it and it's not just enough to deal with it yourself. You need help. And that's, again, what I encourage the most, that man in the hole. You need somebody to help you show you the way out sometimes, and never ever be afraid to ask for it.
Yeah. And so some of the information from the National Institute of Mental Health, they kind of break it down with when you're asking yourself, do you need help, right? One of the first things to determine is how much your symptoms are interfering with your daily life. So the first question you ask is, do I have mild symptoms that have lasted for less than 2 weeks? And so this kind of talking to, am I feeling a little down? Have I recognized that that's because of the weather, for instance? Or do I have anxiety building into, like, for instance, we've got a kid graduating high school, another one, and, we've got to do all these outdoor chores that we cannot do because of the weather. So is that building in us a little anxiety? And, are you feeling down, but are you still able to do your job, schoolwork or housework? Are you having a little trouble sleeping? Not a lot, but some trouble. Are you still able to take care of yourself or others, even though you're feeling down? And have this lasted less than 2 weeks? So that's kind of your first step, right? Yes. And if this is the answer, if you just heard me say that and Greg talk about the weather, so what are some self-care activities, Greg, that you've seen that can help in that instance?
100%. And this is where that, living your best life and that kind of holistic approach to things comes in, and we look for this and want this and help our clients with this, but really all the people in our lives that we are important to us and that we care about. First and foremost, right, always, if you're feeling this way, talk to somebody, right? It may not rise to the level of a counselor right away, but reach out to someone that you love, that you trust. It's that community in that friendship versus loneliness that I think makes all the difference in the world. And there's empirical evidence out there that supports this. Harvard did a study. They call it, I think it's the official term is the study of adult development, but it dates back to 1938. It's one of the longest running studies following the same group of people, if not the longest ever. And it started with a group of men back in 1938 and follows them to this day. And the number one thing that this study showed in terms of life satisfaction and happiness and, just overall fulfillment in life was community. Those that had long-lasting friendships versus those, and longevity, by the way, it also aided in that. Those that had long-lasting friendships, community, people around them that loved them and that they loved and cared about, did tremendously better than those who tried to go it alone. And I think that speaks volumes. So first and foremost, if you're experiencing any of these symptoms, if you are feeling that you're in that hole, reach out to someone. You may be at the beginning stages of this, you may be middle, whatever the case may be, that will determine who you reach out to, but talk to someone, ask for help. I mentioned naming it, that introspection, talking to yourself, having that conversation with yourself, trying to, find some root causes as to what's bothering you. Sometimes that takes longer than other times, but it's worth doing that examination. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, I was going to say, and when you're thinking about this, something that just struck me as we were talking, I know we're talking about a larger topic in general, and it at times can seem heavy, and like you may be thinking to yourself, well, yeah, I'm just stressed about this one thing, but this is something too, we talk about with some of our clients, especially those who are heading into retirement. Retirement's a huge change in lifestyle, interacting socially. And so like a lot of these topics that we're talking about right now that Greg's getting to with community and like, this hole that you may be in, it doesn't necessarily have to be deep and dark. It could just be uncertainty of heading into retirement and going, well, what the heck am I going to do now? Right. And I think we've seen that with a lot of clients and just a lot of folks that we know, is that going, okay, you're about to go through a huge life change, whether or not you think so. Like, and you may be looking forward to retiring and not working anymore, but things are going to be different and you need to be prepared for that. And part of that is engaging socially and finding a network of friends, family, community that you can talk to about. It doesn't even have to be very serious things. Just talk about being retired and, having somebody to hang out with now that you're not going to work every day at 9 a.m. or 8 a.m. or whatever your work schedule was.
That's exactly right. Yeah. I mean, it's just it's being able to kind of not be alone in this journey.
Yeah.
Right. Whatever that particular journey is or whatever that particular battle is, going it alone is very rarely the answer. Some other things, simple, but I think effective. And you all can save some money on therapy. I'll have paid it for you. Right. The expression that I took away was, don't should on yourself. I should be doing this. I should be doing that.
Yeah.
I should have this. I should have that. Be kinder to yourselves, right? It's take it easy on yourself. Self-talk, self-love. These things are important. Seems silly, but how you talk to yourself and the pressures that you put on yourself are important. And they can drastically affect and improve or negatively affect your your state of mental health. Another easy one, you're right, it's so basic, but we all, I think, fall prey to not doing it during times of great anxiety or stress, is move, right? Get out and get some fresh air, exercise, get your blood flowing. Endorphins are free, right? You don't need a prescription. They help, right? Getting that blood moving, getting out for a brisk walk, a run, a bike ride, a kayak, whatever your thing is, it helps, right? It helps you work through things mentally. It helps to flush the system. It just helps to get your heart rate up. Sleep is we don't talk enough about sleep. So many people are probably operating on too little. And that has a cumulative negative effect over time and will wear down, your mental health. Think of, if you're a car person, right, you think of an engine, you don't change that oil and you don't do the proper maintenance. Well, over time, it's going to have a negative effect. It will ultimately stop working. Same goes with things like nutrition, sleep, exercise. These are all eating maybe a little more cleanly, watching the alcohol intake, the sugar intake, things of that nature that are proven to have a negative effect on our emotions.
Well, and I think too that like, I think day to day, right, as we look, especially if we're busy or we have a lot going on, some of those things can seem insurmountable. And so I've always taken the approach whenever I've tried to better myself in any way, right, is the old adage of how to eat an elephant, right? And it's one spoon
bite at a time.
Yeah, one spoonful at a time. And so just small incremental changes can help you and move you in the right direction. So like if we're talking about exercise, one thing a lot of folks do here at Strategic at work is they just go out for a walk at lunch.
That's right.
I mean, I know that's hard when it's been raining a billion days in a row, but but just small. What's a small step that I could take today to better myself, right? And like for me, I am 100% a stress eater, and it's one of those things. Like if things are tough right now, I'm like, what would be great? Pizza, because I know I could control that. I know it's gonna make me happy, and I know I can just get a kick out of that, right? And I think when we talk about dieting and stuff, they always talk about cheat days. That's a big topic when and it's because you need that kind of like positive thing that's like, okay, I did all the hard work. Here's a short little like positive movement I can get out of that, because a lot of this is longer term gains. And so you need those like short bursts of positive reinforcement that are helping you to move forward. So I think in any of the topics that we talk about, and with financial planning, right, and getting on the right track financially, is small gains. Like, what can I do today that's just a small move forward?
It's you hit it on the head, right? I mean, all too often we think we have to, do these drastic things, and when we're super stressed, like you said, I am no different. When I am stressed to the max and feel like I don't have enough time for everything, and too much to do, the first thing that might get cut out is, meal planning or meal prepping or getting my workout in. I don't have time for that.
Yep.
No, that's exactly what you should be making the time for. And then everything else, fill in everything else after that. But take care of you, your self-care first. It doesn't have to be massive changes. It can be that bite at a time. The same thing goes, we've seen people with, multiple unsecured debts, right? And how do we deal with this? Well, we're going to deal with it. We're going to find, whether it's attack the highest interest payment first or the smallest one first, or whatever the case may be, we're going to do this one bite at a time, and we're going to get to a better place. The same goes with your health, your nutrition, your overall sense of being. It's the things that you talked about, like what we reach for when we're feeling stressed. I'm the same way. Grew up Italian. I'm a huge stress eater, huge comfort food seeker. And oftentimes that's not the answer, because it'll exacerbate or compound. Next thing you know, you're putting on more weight and you're feeling worse about yourself, right? Like, so it's that check, kind of almost like, when you go again with the analogy, when you go to get the car oil change, they take you through that checklist. Like, we've all got our personal checklists. Am I getting enough sleep? Am I drinking water? Am I drinking too much alcohol? Am I eating the right things? Like, all these things that we can go through and ask. And if we see some red flags, if we see some things in the red, now we can take some steps to correct them. And again, I'm going to be a broken record. Talk to people.
Yep.
Other people have been through this, right? Whether it's the anxiety, the depression, the feelings of being less than, or I'm not measuring up.
Yeah.
We've all been in those periods in our lives, and we've all been in these valleys and the holes. Lean on folks. You don't have to do it alone. A lot of companies have employee assistance programs. It's there for you.
Yep.
Right? There's hotlines. There's counseling today is more accessible than it's ever been, right? You can do it. You could even do it online. BetterHelp offers, not to plug something, but that's just one of many.
Yep.
That it offers accessible online counseling. So you don't have to necessarily go find a physical place to go.
It's become much more personal, I guess it's the best way I can, I was trying to think of the word, but like, because before in the old days, you would have to like physically leave, go somewhere, be seen going into somewhere, right? Where now you can, even just regular doctor's appointments you can do through teledoc or whatever now. And you're like, I don't even have to go anywhere. All right. I'll just do this from the comfort of my living room. Okay, great. So yeah, I think just being aware. And so some of those early ones we talked about are mild symptoms that like the exercise, the eating healthy, sleeping, engaging in social contact, building communities, practicing mindfulness, like these things can help you with those things. So the next thing, I think to get a little bit more serious that you do have to ask yourself is, do I have more severe symptoms? Are they lasting more than 2 weeks? And some of those are real difficulty sleeping. Has that been lasting more than 2 weeks than just like a night here or there? Has your appetite changed that's resulted in unwanted weight changes, whether that's losing weight or gaining weight, right? Now, this is, again, over 2 weeks, more than 2 weeks. Are you struggling to get out of bed in the morning because of your mood? Is that becoming a problem? Are you having difficulty concentrating? Again, for more than 2 weeks. Loss of interest in things you usually find enjoyable, right? That's something that can be things that you need to look at. And then, I think the final very severe one is thoughts of death or self-harm, right? So when you're thinking about, and again, these all come from the National Institute of Mental Health. This isn't Jay or Greg telling you this. This is professionals. We're just shining a light on it. But if you have some of those more severe symptoms, that's when you absolutely need to start looking outside for help, whether it's a therapist, medications, whatever that may be that's going to need to help, whether you need to talk to your regular physician, your regular healthcare provider. You need to reach out, especially if any of those last kind of number of things started ringing bells in your head.
That's exactly right. And again, it might start small, right? And then unattended, it might escalate. And next thing you know, you're into those heavier, more severe symptoms. And, you're not seeing joy. You're not seeing enjoyment. You're not wanting to get out of bed. You're not seeing the purpose of it all. Like I said, I grew up with this and I watched it, and it doesn't have to go that route.
Yeah.
Right. I watched it go to the worst place. And that is an option to me that is untenable and one that no one needs to go, because there are too many resources now and too many things available that can help. And I have said to lots of groups that I have talked to about this, man, call me. I'm not a doctor. I only play one, on the podcast. But God darn it, call me. Start with me if you need someone to talk to. And I'm going to take you by the hand and get you to someone that's an expert in this, because the world is better off with you in it. And every one of us has a talent, a gift, something to offer. And there are those that love you and care about you and want you in this world. And it never has to get to that option. It simply doesn't. I get a little emotional at times when I'm talking about this, because it is personal to me. And I've seen the effect it can have on families in the aftermath. So reach out, see, feel, do that self evaluation and how you're feeling. And if you see yourself going down, one of these paths or feeling things that feel out of control, then that's the time to reach out to someone. And I would say to all of us, maybe you're in a great place and maybe you're doing just fine and you're feeling good about life and you've got things squared away, but you've got that friend who has been awfully quiet lately and hasn't been around, and you've not seen him engage in their socials, and they've not been to the dinners, and they've been more reclusive. There's a good chance that there's a reason.
Yeah.
And they might be going through something. So that empathy, that emotional awareness, that, being open to what's happening with others, that's important, because you can take that first step and reach out to someone and say, you okay? Everything all right? Is anything going on? Is there something that you want to talk about that I can help with? Sometimes people are just desperately wanting or praying someone that would ask. And they're too scared to ask on their own. So it goes both ways. Be aware of it in those that you love and that you care about and that you're around often. And also, if you're going through it yourself, please speak up.
Yeah, and I'd say to that as well, that sometimes I think it's hard to recognize it in ourselves. I think sometimes we're just living our lives, and there are times, like even just simpler tasks, like, I've definitely had my wife tell me, like, hey, you kind of reacted to that a little differently than I anticipated. She says it in I'm pretty making that much more flowery than that conversation goes. But and you don't, sometimes you just don't even recognize it in yourself. And I think it's very difficult for self-awareness and ownership of yourself, instead of being defensive when a loved one says that and you go, well, maybe you have the attitude. I think you need to just sit and go, wait, do I? Like, why did that come up? You know what I mean? And kind of self-reflecting on that and saying, oh, this is the person who's known me the longest, and they're saying this, like, maybe I need to okay, do a little check here and go, wait, what's going on with me? Like, why am I reacting like this? And also, I think to Greg's to your story, though that was the furthest that went down the darkness and creates the most problems, I will say that there's other things along that path that it doesn't have to get that far, but it still can affect the other ones around you and make their lives harder. Even just from, whether you're depressed or you're filled with anxiety or you have these other mental illnesses, before they even go that far, you're affecting your loved ones and the people around you, and you may not even realize it.
100%. I mean, so it's not uncommon for those feelings of whether it's anxiety or depression or, whatever that particular mental illness might be. It's not uncommon for it to manifest itself in other behaviors that hurt those around you, like anger and violence. Like that is something that is unfortunately seen often. Or they could just get so withdrawn and down that they're barely functioning as a parent or a brother or a sister or whatever the case may be. There's so many different ways it can go before it gets to the worst case scenario. And the goal is to be aware of it in those that you love, right, and help them get the help, and be a regular do a regular self introspection, and do the work in that sense, in terms of evaluating what's going on with yourself and how you're feeling, and go through the checklist, and if you see something out of whack, address it earlier rather than later. And we talked about the steps that you can take. It starts small, right? It really does. It's that, like you said, eating that elephant, one spoonful at a time. It's why that Admiral McRaven, I think his name is, he's got the philosophy about making your bed every day.
Yeah.
Well, it's you can see the kind of rationale there, right? You start with a win, and that win leads to a second win, and a third, and a fourth, and a fifth. So you start small, right? Today I'm going to get out and get some fresh air, go for a walk. I'm going to do something for myself. I'm going to seek out my friend, and I'm going to have a conversation and talk to somebody. Like little steps that will avalanche and go take you down a better road. So
yeah,
all things that there's no perfect recipe for all this. There's no perfect prescription, but it's the conversation, I think, that we all need to be having. And I think men fall prey to not having this conversation more often than women. I think they are more prone to, not to overly stereotype and generalize, but it's just, I think there's just some differences there, that men are more prone to bury it. And my whole point of this conversation is to say, hey, it's okay to talk about it. It's okay to reach out for help. And fathers, talk to your sons about it. That this should not be a taboo topic. These are things that need to be said, and they help everybody.
Yeah, agree. And so as we wrap up here, I just want to leave you all on this. Of those roughly 59 million adults, 18 and plus, that had mental illness, only 50% of them received treatment. And as we talk, I want to leave you on that from the National Institute of Mental Health. If you are in crisis or know someone who is, you can call or text 988. That is the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline, or you can chat with them at 988lifeline.org, or you can text the crisis text line you can text hello to 741-741. So reach out to your loved ones. If you are in crisis, reach out to the Lifeline 988. Thank you, Greg.
Well said. Thank you.
This podcast is for educational and informational purposes only. Please see the full disclosure in our show notes for more information.